and I am calling you, seeing you today from beautiful sunny Los Angeles. And today our panel will be moderated by the distinguished Dr. Randall Maxey, Chief Medical Officer of Advanced Community Medical Care Corporation and co-founder of the Black Health Trust. He will introduce his wonderful co-moderator and guest speakers for today. The mission of the Black Health Trust is to provide credible insights from our community health experts to best serve our communities of color with a coalition of leading and long-standing Black medical professionals across a diverse spectrum of disciplines, and to offer unvarnished opinions and insights into our physical and mental health during these challenging times. I want to share a few housekeeping items and announcements for the program. Please be advised that this video conference is live and is being recorded on different public platforms like Facebook Live and YouTube, and that participation on this call is completely voluntary. If you choose to participate on this program and prefer not to have your image and likeness displayed, there are visual and audio settings on your device that you can use to block your picture and mute your voice. So Simon will audio mute everyone on the call initially. We ask that you remain muted until the host or facilitator asks you to contribute in order to minimize the distraction of background noise out of respect for our speakers. So please check and make sure your device is muted at all times until called upon to speak, and then once again, place your device back on mute when you're done speaking. As for the chat room, if you have questions, and we hope you do, you can enter them into the chat room, but please limit your questions to just 2 questions per topic being addressed. And we also appreciate if you didn't use the forum to advertise or promote your products. Understand that there may not be sufficient time to get to all our questions during the call, but we will do our best. The disclaimer here is for you to be advised that the information communicated on this program is not deemed to be medical or legal advice, and you should always consult your own medical or legal professional for advice pertaining to your particular needs and situation. Here comes the promo. Black Health Trust needs you to continue bringing our community of color, outstanding programming, critical and timely information. Please visit www.blackhealthtrust.org. And to learn more about our programming, how to support, volunteer, make cash contributions, and donate by credit card or any other way that you can. We need your support to keep this programming running and to keep everyone on task as far as taking care of our people of color. So thank you in advance for that. We will have a member of the BHT Executive Board talk more about supporting Black Health Trust later on in the program. I want to thank the Black Health Trust Steering Committee, the Virtual Administrative Assistant, Nito, our production and Zoom technician, Simon, and all the people behind the scenes for their time and efforts to make this program possible. We could not do this without you, and you are not taken for granted. Last, I want to welcome, big welcome to all of our distinguished physicians and special guests. We thank you for sharing your valuable time, your information, and educated insights with us. Your participation and support help to empower our communities of color, and this is a critical time for our present and future for the well-being of our people. Knowledge is power. Welcome again, everyone, to the Black Health Trust weekly program. Grab your coffee, tea, get comfortable, and lean in. Dr. Maxey, please do the honor of moderating the program.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to unmute.
You're unmuted.
Good. Welcome again to the Black Health Trust Sunday program. It is our plan to provide credible information for the benefit of your health, especially in the time of COVID and so many health disparities that are happening. We've got a good crew of distinguished speakers to bring valuable information to you. I suggest that you take notes, and we're ready to get started. We know that there has been a major shift in unfortunate growth in the cases of COVID over the past few days. We know that as of today, there are 10,846 cases, 373 cases in the United States. So this is very bad. The total deaths are 244,810. It occurs to me that we are in a war, and the war is for our very health and lives. When you're in a war, I'm told that the very best defense is to have a good offense. And that offense is to arm yourself with a strong immune system. We know that you should eat better. You should have food that has micronutrients. If you can't eat that healthier diet, we ask that you add prenatal vitamins because they've got all the micronutrients. We also know that you need doses of vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. Social distancing remains to be important. We know with the holidays coming up, everybody wants to get a big turkey and have 50 people over to the house. Well, I'm suggesting you get a chicken and have a few people over the house and do a Zoom call with the rest of your family. It's shown that the most spread recently comes from people gathering with family. And they say, well, we trust them. Well, I trust them too. But if they have not been sheltered in place with your nuclear family, they represent a danger. A possible change you can make is to have an event outside with appropriate social distancing, if it's warm enough to do that. And if it must be inside with proper ventilation and the windows open. But the reason having a dinner is dangerous is that you can't wear a mask and eat. And when you're talking and breathing, you're sharing your air. And that's where the virus inhabits. So we want you to be very careful. Continue to wash your hands, use soap and water, use hand sanitizer after the soap and water, and be careful. Those are the things that I wish you would follow. I'm going to introduce my very capable co-moderator, Dr. Barbara Stevens, Neighbor Stevens. I met her as Neighbor, now she's a Stevens. She's a pediatrician. She went to Tufts, New England Medical School. She went to Harvard. She's gone to all the good schools in the country. Dr. Stevens, would you introduce yourself and go to the first speaker?
Good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to again be able to have the opportunity of being with you and having the opportunity to share credible information with our community. There are always opportunities to share good news. And today, the good news that I want to share is the fact that we have clarification. There has been this question kind of up in the air about the use of mask and what effect the mask really has. Well, it was released this week and distributed this week, new findings that really do show that not only does wearing the mask protect others, it also protects you. So it's a two-way street. It's a win-win situation. Wear your mask. With that, I would like to now turn it over to our first speaker, Dr. Stella Namuso. Namusiso. And she will share with us today. And I learned in our pre-meeting that she and Dr. Maxey have a long-standing relationship. Dr. Stella is a nephrologist, and we're going to turn it over to her at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Barbara. As I prepare to share my screen, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to share with you information on mainly focusing on diabetes. Did you know that diabetes is a pandemic, an epidemic, and now we have a pandemic? So we've added another layer to this epidemic of diabetes. So I'm sharing my screen with you. I am a doctor of physical therapy, and thank you so much for this honor and great privilege to share with you a little bit of information which I know. The question I want to pose to you this afternoon is, what are we doing with chronic disease management? The term we are hearing more and more now these days is that for those people with pre-existing conditions, the COVID-19 virus, the coronavirus is actually affecting them more, or their chance of dying from the coronavirus is higher for people with chronic diseases. I want you to keep this at the back of your mind. What is working and what are the outcomes? And also, coming from this forum today, how can we all go home and set some smart goals to improve our health? So when we talk about an epidemic, we are talking about something which is happening now, the coronavirus. But when we talk about pandemics, they've always been, ongoing over time. So I want us to take a look at what diabetes has done. And at the end of the day, we will encourage all of our participants today to take a health survey, a personal health survey. Realize that there's a call to action when it comes to diabetes. Yesterday was World Diabetes Day. This whole month of November is National Diabetes Awareness Month, and the color is blue. So I'm making a statement today to say people need to know a little more about diabetes. People need to be tested for diabetes. So diabetes is affecting us. It's very common among the African American populations, Hispanics, and Asian American communities as well. How big is this problem? It is estimated now that we have about 422 billion people worldwide. So not only is this problem affecting America, but it's a problem worldwide. 1 in every 5 healthcare dollars is spent on caring for people with diabetes. I'm not here to scare you, but I want you to see the big picture. The next slides I'm going to share with you is information which is available from the cdc.gov site. What I want you to pay attention to is the color. Where you see the color white, it's missing data. Less than 4.5% is off white, and yellow is in the 4 to 5.9% range. So between 1994 and 1999, we saw a change where we began to see colors in the orange. So orange is a range between 7.5 to 8.9%. We are not going to be stuck with numbers here, but we need to see the big picture. Look what happened between 1999 and 2000. We no longer saw states which were off-white, but most states are in the orange, yellow, and red area. If we had stayed here in 2000, we'd be doing great. But look what happened in 2005. Most states in the southeastern part of the country now registering even a more than 9.0%, mainly in the South. My understanding is that some parts of the South, we actually even fry ice cream and cheesecake. And I've seen restaurants which do this. So keep at the back of your mind that the numbers are increasing. This is what was happening in 2006. And every 5 years, the situation is growing. So diabetes is a growing problem. And now we have a pandemic where we had an epidemic. Look in 2011, how most states are now between 7.5 and over 9%. This is the problem. This is where we are now, almost maybe worse than we were in 2014. What is evident here is that it's a growing problem. And when we look at the big picture, diabetes is affecting 30.3 million adults in the US. That's 1 out of every 11 people. So on this platform today, we have probably almost close to 40 persons attending. At least 4 people in this platform have diabetes, or even more than that. This is a growing problem. Not only is it 30.3 million adults estimated to have this problem, it is known that 1 out of every 4 adults have no idea that they have diabetes. These are the people who have a pass out at church or have a crash or fall and break a hip, or they can't see anymore and then they discover they have diabetes. It is estimated that it takes up to 10 years prior to being diagnosed with diabetes from the time the symptoms come on. And this is a bigger problem. 84 million adults in the US have prediabetes. These are people who are known to have a touch of borderline or a touch of sugar. It's actually known as prediabetes. That's a huge number. And it's okay to be a big number. What concerns me is 9 out of 10 people don't even know that they have the pre-diabetic condition. And there is a screening test which can be done. It's a paper form, which is available on the cdc.gov, and will also make it available to people to be able to know their risk. So at this point, we want to know the risk. I want to just remind everyone attending today and everyone who's going to listen to this recording that it is important that we all know our numbers. This is the beginning of the conversation of addressing chronic diseases. Knowing your numbers is key so you can know the trend over the years. And this slide is just giving you what is recommended in terms of cholesterol, high blood pressure, triglycerides, as well as BMI. I know sometimes knowing the numbers is hard, but I also want to recommend that for most people, half your height should be your waistline. That's a measure we can all do. Measure your height with a string, fold it in half, and put it around your waist. If it doesn't touch, there's a problem, because that is part of what we see today in terms of metabolic disorders. So for those of you who are listening, I want you after this session to know your numbers. That's important. Why is this important? Because health behaviors are a factor. Based on the Robert Wood Johnson County Rankings surveys and research studies, they found out that 20% of clinical care is a determinant of health, but there are other factors. What I just want you to notice is this: health behaviors are 30%. Clinical care is 20%. In layman terms, this tells me that if we have 10 points, 2 out of 10 is based on clinical care, and 3 out of 10 is what I do every day because I go home with myself, by myself. Of course, we have other factors like social factors, environmental factors as well, which play a role. But if we can get 3 out of 10 right, we can improve on these chronic diseases. I just want to bring this message home and say it looks like the more we know, the less we are doing. The gap between knowing and doing is getting wider. So it is our intent to narrow this gap so that people can do as much as they know. Of course, now, if you go online and you Google any word like diabetes, you probably will find millions and billions of hits, because those are different sites which are talking about diabetes. And it becomes very hard to know where to start from. So thank you for wanting to join this movement of closing the gap between knowing and doing. And I hope that when I finish sharing with you the few information I have today, that you can take the necessary strides to narrow the gap between what you know and what you do. Understanding diabetes and pre-diabetes is key, because diabetes is the #1 cause of blindness, cataracts, retinopathy, glaucoma, the #1 cause of loss of legs, neuropathy, renal disease, kidney failure, #1 cause of vascular disease as well. So everywhere where blood goes, diabetes affects. This is profound. And at the center is you and I. I just also want to highlight this. It is a puzzle, and we understand it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle which involves every single aspect of our lives. However, we can narrow it down to 3 things: healthier food choices, physical activity, and stress management. And every single one of us can go home and evaluate how we are doing in these 3 areas: healthier food choices, physical activity, and stress management. I also want to encourage everyone to take a moment and do an evaluation on how you're doing. We did create a small survey, which we can make available to you to help you prioritize and identify the areas where you can start taking the necessary steps to make a change in your life about your health. When it comes to chronic diseases, I also want to say this, it's a process. It's a process which when you begin the journey, you can get results. Follow up with your physician, connect with those who promote physical activity and healthier food choices, be it lifestyle coaches, peer diabetic educators, so you can start traveling from where you are now to success. You can do it. It can be done. So we are encouraging everyone to at least get involved. The National Diabetes Prevention Program has a curriculum which was designed by the CDC. We do offer that program. We do train people to be lifestyle coaches. We train people to be peer diabetic educators to manage diabetes. It is my hope that what I have shared with you today will help you find something you can do to get involved today. I thank everyone for listening, and I am hoping that at the end of the day, we can all get together and fight this monster, diabetes. For we know that there's a 50% chance of dying from the COVID-19 pandemic based on diabetes and other pre-existing conditions. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to share with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stella, for sharing with us your insights. But I want to probe on something. You said something to me that was very profound. Being a pediatrician, I am totally oriented around prevention. And you made the strong statement that we have a growing gap between what we know and what we do. So in your experience, what have you found to be the 2 or 3 most common reasons for people not doing what they know?
Thank you, Miss Barbara. That's a great question. So I will begin just by saying, growing up in Africa, my mother taught me very well. She taught me to eat everything on my plate because people in Cuba were starving. When I was over 335 pounds, I realized I'm not feeding Cuba here. So part of what stands in the way is what we know, and we refuse to know new ways. So I had to change my ways from what I thought I knew I was feeding Cuba to realize I'm feeding me. So some of us eat because we were taught to eat everything on our plate, and we don't realize that the food we eat today is different from the food back in the day. That stands in the way. And also lack of support and lack of advocacy within our African American communities is a factor. Ms. Barbara, it takes 17 years for research to translate into practice in the US. So even though research is ongoing, by the time it gets to our communities, it's 17 years later. But best practice exists. And on an individual level, I think people are afraid to embrace change. Change is painful for all of us, and also to trust the process. So I hope I've answered your question, Ms. Barbara.
I'd like to ask a question if I can. This is Dr. Maxey. I like the statistics that you gave, and you talked about 17 years in research before something comes out. There's also the issue that I think you mentioned in diabetes. When we diagnose diabetes between 10 and 12 years after we see the first evidence of a little bit of protein in your urine, you begin to have retinopathy or disease in the back of your eyes. You begin to have the early start of kidney damage. And as you noted, there's a disease of the blood vessels or the endothelium. Many of the things that you suggested help mitigate the damage of diabetes. And I wonder if you comment on how your program can help prevent or decrease the decline into some of these problems that when diabetes affects the end organ.
Thank you. So there's 2 ways our program can help people. We train people to be coaches, lifestyle coaches for diabetes prevention. In a 2-day training, we give the participants the tools to engage an adult learner into a process of lifestyle change. Lifestyle change doesn't happen overnight. There are known stages of change, which range from pre-contemplative, contemplative, action, preparation, before action, then after action, you actually have to maintain. So that whole process takes a lot of peer mentoring, guidance, support. We also engage individuals who meet the criteria of pre-diabetes into our program, where they can learn how to, or they can be enhanced on how to make healthier food choices and physical activity. So based on what we know, the risk of diabetes and pre-diabetes is associated with ethnicity, as I mentioned earlier. Age is a factor. As we age, the less active we are, the higher the risk. So Dr. Maxey, we do have a program to help everyone. People need to be open-minded and realize that the moment to act is now and not tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Michelle, are there any questions for her in the chat box?
I think just one. Thank you, Dr. Stella. So I think you said if it takes up to 10 years for diabetes to maybe be recognizable, and many people don't go to the doctor until something's wrong. So are there any symptoms of pre-diabetes that a person can be aware of?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Ms. Michelle. So yes, during those 10 years, there are several symptoms, which may include fatigue, irritability, loss of energy, food cravings, as well as night sweats, sweating a lot at night, urination, excessive urination, going to the bathroom a lot, excessive thirst, wanting to drink, and mood swings as well. So BMI is a good indicator, body mass index. Any adult who has a body mass index of 26 or higher for African Americans and 25 or higher for Asian Americans is at risk. And anyone who has a brother, a sister, a mother, a father with diabetes is at risk. And any mother who gave birth to a child who was more than 9 pounds has a higher risk. Any female who had gestational diabetes, which means they had diabetes when they were pregnant, they are higher risk. As well as anyone who was born 9 pounds or higher is also a risk. So there are risk factors we can change. There are risk factors we cannot change. So I just want to say this, there's few things we can change: healthier food choices, physical activity, and managing stress. So our program enhances those 3 areas and also make people realize that if you are not active and eating healthy and you're 45 years old, your chance of getting pre-diabetes, if you have those other factors, is higher. By the time you're 65, chances are you're gonna have diabetes. And I wanna end by saying, Dr. Maxey, thank you. So there's microvascular problems and macrovascular problems. Earlier on, I did a Facebook talk on the body organs, and I tried to bring that message home. Anywhere where blood goes, diabetes affects.
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You know, you bothered me. Somebody cut my string. It's too short. It won't go around my waist. I don't know what happened. Dr. Barber, I'd like to introduce our next speaker if I could.
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Aaron Palmer has been on our program before. We were very impressed with him because he spoke about Move Baby Move. And after hearing from Dr. Stella about how physical exercise and fitness and appropriate eating play a role, it's very important to do that again. I'd like to bring Mr. Aaron Palmer on, and in the next 7 to 10 minutes, he will discuss what he wants to about Move Baby Move. He's a certified physical trainer. We invite him, Mr. Palmer.
Well, thank you, Dr. Maxey. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you, Dr. Stella. That is very important information that you've given. and I happen to live in one of those red southeastern states. So I'm doing all I can to help improve the quality and quantity of life for as many people as I can here. I have a question for everybody out there. How many of you remember when you actually had to get up out of your chair to change the television? Anybody remember that? You remember those times? Okay. What about when you had to actually get up to answer the telephone? The telephone was another one. You had to get out your seat. I'm not alone with that, okay? And lastly, and this might be a little personal, but I used to go to my grandmother's house, and I say, Granny Goose, call her Granny Goose. I say, I want some ice cream. She says, sure, baby, I can give you some ice cream, but you got to help me make it. So I remember that rock salt, I remember that ice, and I remember turning that crank, because you couldn't get that ice cream without turning that crank, all right? And so I say all that to say that our bodies have memory. If you used to exercise or you played sports when you were younger, we have what we call motor or muscle memory. Your body remembers that. So it's important, no matter your age, no matter your ability, it's important to move, all right? So without further ado, you owe it to yourself to be the best that you can be and to feel the best that you can feel. Free from disease, free from stress, and free from pain, lean, strong, and healthy. I'm going to show you, because me talking about exercise is oxymoronic, so we're going to do a little exercising today. Do I have my screen now? Can I share now? I believe I can.
Yes, you can.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. All righty. Let's get moving here. All right, everybody, sit up nice and tall in your chair. Feet flat on the ground, stomach in, chest out, chin up, arms out to the side. I want you to slowly raise your arms like this while you inhale through your nose. Once you get to the top, I want you to turn your hands the other way and lower your arms while you exhale through your mouth. This is our warrior pose. Come up, smell those flowers. Now down, blow out those candles. Beautiful. Give me 3 more. Smell those flowers and blow out those candles. 2 more. Deep breath in and exhale. Last one. Smell those flowers and blow out those candles. Now I want you to do this one. I want you to give me some shoulder rolls. I want you to come up and towards the rear. Just like you're saying, I don't know. You're just warming up your upper body nice and easy, okay? Nice and easy. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Beautiful. Give me 3 more. There's 3. There's 2. And there's 1. That's warrior pose. Up for 1. Deep breath in. And exhale. Now what I want you to do now is put your hands in prayer position like you're saying your prayers. Point your hands straight ahead. Extend your arms nice and long. Now give me a breaststroke. Come underneath your underarms like this. And then exhale here. Beautiful. There you go. Smell those flowers and blow out those candles. Excellent. Give me 3 more. Deep breath in and blow it out. 2 more. Deep breath in and blow it out. There you go. 1 more. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Beautiful. Shake it out for me. Beautiful. Let's sit up nice and tall. Let's put your hands on the steering wheel like you're driving that brand new Corvette, okay? I want you to take a deep breath in. Now slowly look to the right and exhale. Slowly to the center, inhale. Slowly to the left, exhale. Again, slowly to the center, inhale. And slowly to the right, exhale. Now I want you to look straight ahead for me. I want you to rest your hands in your laps. You do an excellent job. Sit up nice and tall for me. Good posture. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Now I want you to look down on the ground and exhale. Look straight ahead. Inhale. Up, exhale. Straight ahead, inhale. Down, exhale. Straight ahead, inhale. Up, exhale. Again, straight ahead and down. And straight ahead and up. Now I want you to look straight ahead. Now we're going to warm up those hips and thighs now. What I want you to do is put your hands on your hips like this. I want you to rest your right foot on top of your left. I want you to come up like you're scratching the front of your shin and down. There you go. I'm in through your nose here, out through your mouth there. Beautiful. Smell those flowers. Blow out those candles. 3 more. Deep breath in. Blow it out. 2 more. Deep breath in. Blow it out. Last one. High as you can. Up and down. Good. Shake it out for me. Now I want you to put the left on top of the right. Coming up and down. Smell those flowers. Blow out those candles. Beautiful. Keep that posture up and down. Beautiful. Smell those flowers. Blow out those candles. Give me 3 more. Deep breath in and blow it out. 2 more. Deep breath in and blow it out. Last one. High as you can, up and down. Good. Shake it out for me. Beautiful. You're doing such an excellent job. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Give me 2 more. Deep breath in and exhale. Last one. Deep breath in and exhale. Now put your hands in prayer position for me. Good posture. Maintain your posture. Elbows diametrically opposed. Deep breath in. Now push to the right and exhale. Beautiful. Center inhale. Right exhale. Center inhale. Left exhale. Again, center and right and center and left. Beautiful. Shake it out. There you go. So we're warm up. That was our warm up. We're about to start moving now, okay? Let's have some fun, all right? Remember to breathe and remember to feel the music, all right? This is like music therapy too. You got to have fun, all right? So here we go. We're just going to march. This is some New Orleans second line music right here. So just feel the beat. We're marching with it. It's like we're marching in the second line. Nice and easy. Just coordinate your arm movements with your leg movements. Just feel the groove. There you go. Beautiful. Feel that groove? Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to do some single heel taps, okay? Like this. 1 and 2. And 1 and 2. Good, beautiful, beautiful. And I want you to exhale on the tap. You got to breathe. Beautiful, beautiful. There you go. All right, so what we're going to do now, I want you to keep those heels tapping. I want you to bring your arms up, palms facing out, elbows high. I want you to push, and I want you to breathe. I want you to push and breathe. Way to keep those elbows high. Keep that core tight. Okay, we're working our core. We're working, okay? Breathing with it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, I want you to count. 10 count here. 1, count with me. 2, there you go. 3, 4, excellent. 5, good. 6, 7, I see you. 8, 9, 10. I want you to keep tapping those heels. Now your arms are here. Palms facing forward. Count with me. 1, 2, work it out. 3, there you go. 4, 5, good. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now keep tapping those heels. Let's raise the roof. Push that roof up. 1, 2, excellent. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There you go. 8, 9, and 10. Good. Shake it out for me. Shake it out for me. Now get your guards up. Protect yourselves at all times. We have front jab like this. Front jab. Let's count them out. 1, 2. There you go. 3, 4. Work those arms. 5, 6. Good. 7, 8, 9, 10. Now uppercuts like this. Uppercuts. 1, 2. Breathing with you. 3. Count with me. 4, 5, 6. Good job. 7, 8, 9, 10. Now hook punches like this. Warming up those arms. Okay, here we go. 1, 2. Work it out. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now I want you to shoot hoop like you shoot a basketball. Wrist down. Wrist down. 1, 2, 3. There you go. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to do a speed bag. We're working the speed bag like this, okay? Good. You can put a little hip into it. I'm going to give you a 3 count. We're going to clap and reverse. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Clap, we'll reverse it. Good. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Clap, we'll reverse it. Now get your rhythm. Your hands should be like a fan. Feels good, okay? Good. You're working it. You got to listen to him. I'm going to try to trick you here. Get ready, okay? So, good. There you go. Breathing with it in through your nose, out through your mouth, okay? Good, good. Work it up. Work it down. To the left. To the right. Now shake it out. We're going to take it home like this, okay? It's heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. You feel that flow? Nice and easy. You're coordinated once again your leg movements with your arm movements, okay? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Breathing with it. Good. Pump those arms. Good. Pump them. Good. There you go. All right. Everybody have that heel, heel, toe, toe. Okay, we're gonna put a little spice on it, okay? So get ready to spice it up a little bit, okay? You ready? Here we go. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Flavor. Again. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Flavor. One more time. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Heel, heel, toe, toe. Flavor. Excellent job. Beautiful, beautiful, everyone. Beautiful. And that was a little taste of Move Baby Move. Okay, the entire program's a half hour. I do relaxation at the end. I'm starting a movement to get everybody healthy, no matter where. If you could do it in a chair, you could do it anywhere, okay? I'm going to be doing free Zoom class on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Central Time. I have a slide that they're going to put up on the screen now. Feel free to join my social media or send me a email so I can contact you and get you into the classes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Maxey. Let me get closer again. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. What a workout. I love that. It reminds me, oh yeah, I need to move. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Are there any questions in the chat box for him?
No. I think everybody was too busy moving.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, now. Thank you. And please, I have that slide. There you go. Excellent. Thank you so much. That's how you contact me. That's my Facebook, my website, and my email address. So if you want information on the free Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time Zoom class, feel free to contact me by either of those methods, and I'll make sure that I get you in there so we can move, baby, move. All right? Thanks again now.
Excellent.
Okay. If Mr. Brooks would speak and followed by Dr. Neighbor introducing our special guest, Mr. James Stevens. Mr. Brooks, would you join us?
Good afternoon, everybody. For the past 2 months, I've had the opportunity of addressing this audience and bringing them up to speed on 2 very, very important issues. The first was the participating in the 2020 election. We're in the midst of a very tragic pandemic, an economic crisis, and still facing unfair treatment from the court systems and local police departments. But despite all of that, bad weather, long lines, and everything else, we voted in record numbers. The numbers of the African-American community participating in the vote are outstanding. And we've gotten credit from Jim Clyburn and from President-elect Joe Biden and Barack Obama, thanking us for our contribution. We did what we needed to do, and we did it in a powerful way. So thank you very, very, very much. And thank this group for participating. A couple of weeks ago, Drina and I were able to attend an event held by the Executive Leadership Council. And I know we've talked about that in as various meetings. Randall and I have talked about it. The Executive Leadership Council is the group of the highest ranking African-American executives in Fortune 500 companies. And I labeled that group the baddest brothers and sisters on the planet. And it was a spectacular, spectacular virtual event that was hosted by ELC. And my former right-hand person, Camilla McGee, who's on this call, was there and invited Drina and I to participate as we've done for years and years and years. So we thank Camilla in advance for that. I labeled that, you know, we're at a beginning stage of the same thing for the Black Health Trust. We've got a great concept and idea, the brainstorm of our founding chairman, Dr. Randall Maxey. Randall's vision was to ensure that African Americans were getting access to information, not just on the coronavirus, but on other things that were taking us out at an early age. And we've talked about diabetes already today, but Randall's vision goes beyond just corona, because hopefully we'll get that solved in the next several months, but we go beyond that. And we set up a strategy of bringing together the top doctors, Black, white, blue, green doctors that are concerned about helping us in our communities. We need world-class information, and we need to take that information to heart. Working out, as you guys just finished breathing hard and working out, is part of staying in shape. We've got to get ourselves in the best shape possible because this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon, and we got to get ourselves in shape. But we also have to get ourselves in financial shape to keep this program running. This program has been running since June, and it started very small, and it's grown to 8,000 to 10,000 people viewing this program on a weekly basis. We're getting viewers from South Africa, from Jamaica, from around the world, and we've got to keep this program going at a high level. We need your financial support to make that happen. This isn't begging for help. We need your help, and it benefits you. So we want you to help us by contributing. No amount of contribution is too small. At the same time, Randall and I talked earlier today, we have 4 or 5 other groups, corporations, and funding sources that we're going to go full court press to really work them very aggressively to see what we can get from these major organizations. We're initiating these efforts, and our steering committee this meeting will focus on our status on where we stand with this. But we got to help ourselves. We can't just depend on others to help us. We've got to help ourselves as we've always done. In advance, I thank you for the same level of support you showed for the voting. I need your financial support the same way. We'll keep you up to speed on how we're doing, working with these other organizations. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
We are now going to have our next speaker, and we are very honored to have this and fortunate to have this speaker today, because if you will think back to what Dr. Stella said, not only do we have to change our eating habits, we have to increase our activity level, and the third thing was decrease stress. And one of the best reducers of stress is comedy. So I'd like for us to now welcome, and he's no relation, Mr. James Stephens III, a renowned comedian and entertainer who will help us with a moment of de-stressing. Thank you.
Well, you know what? It's just a wonderful opportunity for me to be here. This is Ray Charles. I just want to say that you guys are absolutely turning me on, baby. Because you know what? That dude said, you got to keep moving, baby. So I've been watching everybody moving. I'm going to thank Dr. Maxey for making this work. And since you're my relative, I'm just loving you right now, baby. You know what I'm saying? I've been so many places in my life and time. Yes, I have. I sing a lot of songs. I made some bad rhymes. Been my life on stages with 1,000 people watching me here. So now we're alone, and I'm singing my song. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. And this is really awesome. It's really awesome. And watching what's happening. I'm a diabetic myself. So I've gotten a lot of information so far on this thing. And one of the things that I think that I do in my life is I play piano a lot. So that gives me relaxation. I work out a lot. And it's really great. And getting information from what you guys are doing, I think is absolutely, outstanding. And I'm digging it right now. So I'm a comedian, of course. I'm in the Southeast right now, but I have a place in Los Angeles. I've been in Los Angeles for the last 25 years, and then I own a theater in Myrtle Beach called the Asher Theater. It's the first African-American owned theater in the history of Myrtle Beach. And of course, you know how it is down here. This is Trump country, so pretty tough for us, but we're doing well. We're still here, and but like I said, we have gatherings. Our theater is open now. We can have up to, it's a small theater, 375. But now we're having shows of we can have 100 people, and everything is social distancing. You have to come in with the mask, and you have to be, we do the temperature, and we sanitize our hands and everything like that. And we have everybody sitting 6 to 8 feet apart. We have 100 people, but it's really great. But I am so glad to be here. I love the music thing, so this is cool. I feel like I am your comic relief right now. And so I'm your comic relief. You know, Ray Charles, you know, did a lot of country stuff too. I was up for the movie Ray Charles, and Jamie Foxx and I, we were the last two people up for that movie. So of course, if I would have gotten the movie, then Jamie Foxx would be playing for you right now. So make sure. So I am so glad to be here. So I'm going to do just a little bit more of some Ray Charles for you. But I do in my act, what I'm doing in Myrtle Beach is I'm doing the Man of a Thousand Voices, where I do impressions of like Ray Charles, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Prince, Al Green, Al Jarreau. A lot of people love it. So let me give you a little Ray Charles singing a country song he made very famous. I can't stop loving you. I made a man to give it. Hey, baby, for the longest time. Yeah, so I'm so glad to be here. I'm supposed to make you guys laugh. I guess I don't know. I don't even know I'm funny because I don't do a lot of Zoom stuff because I'm normally in Vegas or something like that. But yesterday I got to I played. Chris Rock is from South Carolina, and Chris and I are friends. So his sister got married yesterday, and his mom called me to come and play for the wedding. And I was like, you know, I don't do weddings, but I went to the wedding, you know, because, and you know, so when I got to the wedding, and then Chris Rock was there, and Chris Rock was like, man, I can't believe you showed up, man. You came, man, I can't believe you showed up at my sister's wedding. You didn't even know my sister. It was really cool. Like, we were hanging out. So a lot of people there, we were having fun, man. It was cool. And you know, when comedians get together, we always get together. We always talking and stuff like that. And, you know, we always talk about other comedians. And I don't want to talk about a lot of things because people say, oh, man. So we talk about like people like, you know, our friends, because we don't see each other. I was at Radio City Music Hall last year with Dave Chappelle. So we all get together, but, you know, we're all on different coasts and stuff like that. But it was really cool to do the wedding yesterday because a lot of celebs were there, you know what I'm saying? So we wish that Bernie Mac was alive because he's been there at the wedding. Let me tell you something, you crazy people. I'm going to tell you something, Bernie. I ain't worried about getting them. I ain't scared of diabetes. I ain't scared of diabetes. I'm Big Mac, man. I'm crazy, man. I'm crazy. You know? So we comedians, we do a lot of things. We have a lot of fun. I do a lot of different impressions. When you come at my show, when I'm performing a lot of times, like at the National Urban League, or if I'm doing something really, you know, national, you know, well, I've done like the orchestra, you know, we'll have a 12-piece orchestra. So I can come out and do like Sammy Davis. Like, hey man, that old black magic got me in a spell. We doing stuff like that, doing, you know, Sammy Davis. We're doing a lot of people like it when I do Prince, you know, because I go, all I want to do is take out. Anyway, I'm your comic relief for 3-4 minutes. I hope that I'm supposed to come back and do something else. So I hope that you guys enjoy what you saw so far. So, and you know, I'm James Stevens. That's all I can tell you. And my cousin, you saw my cousin. I'm impressed with her. You know, I mean, she's. I went to school at Georgetown, by the way. So so I studied there. But I saw my cousin. I said, I got to do this show. Stevens, Stephens. I'm James. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Laughter is one of the best medicines.
Thank you so much. Again, he's another gentleman brought to us by Mr. John Sudukas. We take our hats off to my friend John. I have another special treat about to come up, and we're going to have Mr. Stevens back at the end of the program. But I'd like to introduce a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Paris Patel. I knew him when he first came to Los Angeles, to Inglewood, as a pulmonary doctor, working with some of my friends at then Centinela Hospital. He is now the chief medical officer of not only one hospital, Centinela Hospital, but 49 other hospitals across the United States. He is a specialist in critical care, in pulmonary medicine, and reading through his bio, Patel, I don't know how you got all that stuff since I haven't seen you for a long time, man. You're a super
You're hiding from me.
In fact, he did receive an award, not only being a top doc, but a super doc. And I recall when I was doing active hospital practice, he is one of the smartest men that I know. And I'm glad that he accepted our invitation to give us information that can help protect us and understand what this super virus is all about. Dr. Paris Patel, we invite you to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Maxey, and it's a pleasure to reacquaint back. I know it's a long 25-year history that we have known each other, but first of all, I'm honored to accept this invitation on behalf of yourself and Black Trust Health because it is important. It's important, and I am so happy to see so many active participants taking an interest in their health at the same token. Wonderful speakers and the knowledge they're sharing to get us better. So with the due, I'm a pulmonary critical care. My special interest became in COVID. As COVID started, the history is very simple. It's a virus that basically originated 20 years back. It just changed and mutated its form. When the pandemic hit the East Coast, surprisingly enough, we were a little late in understanding China, a little late in understanding Europe, and hopefully we had taken some steps then actually to prohibit travel, contact, and education. The second thing, what happened was in the country, we failed to educate our population and mass media, and that's why the pandemic became more severe than what we should have gone through. But past is past, but we can always learn from the knowledge that we acquired. Most of the presentation I'm going to share with you is highly scientific and medical. So when you focus on the slide, I will try to make it as simple as so everybody can understand. Given the fact what Dr. Maxey earlier said, Dr. Beverly and Dr. Stella said, consider this as a phase that we had not to take it lightly. There are some good news that are popping up in the market and probably in the medical industry, but it's more important we educate ourselves. And knowledge is power, and that's what we need to correctly use. If I may have the slide popped up so I can control over it, please.
You have capabilities now, Dr. Patel.
Be able to see the slide deck?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So the data that I'm going to share with you is updated as of November 6th, 2020. Some of it may vary because the population in the last 7 or 8 days, the numbers have changed slightly. The portion of that I'm going to address is, more importantly, what do we do about it? The pandemic is here and it is still continuing, and we've seen a little slight rise. The slight rise that basically what we saw compared to February to March era currently is what Dr. Max was alluding. Holidays are coming. We started social gatherings. We ignored the common facts of isolation. And what do we do about it going forward? So at least we can protect ourselves, our loved ones, and the community as large. So global epidemiology, I'm going to talk about it, as Dr. Maxey said, that confirmed cases in the United States now within a last week or 10, we went up by from 9.6 to 10 million. And if you look at the amount of deaths, right? And if you look at the interesting fact here to point out is global deaths, United States ranks the highest. More so, if you can always question the statistics reported from Brazil, Russia, France, but given the fact we are seeing a high amount of deaths, and there are multiple various reasons to understand now, which I'll allude on to later, why we are probably facing more deaths than most of the rest of the country in the world. If you look at the numbers of people that have recovered out of the 9 million, United States, and definitely even with advanced medicine and technology, we were able to see almost about 4 million people now. So wonderful care, but the care will lie more so in prevention rather than treating the disease. Here's what we looked at the tracker in the cases and the deaths. As you look at the United States and the geographic areas, and if you look at the kind of more importantly is the spread. And areas that we see highest concentration are Florida, Texas, and California. So that affects all of us. Part of it may be because one is how certain bigger, larger cities with overcrowding, our behavior about sharing information, at the same time social distancing, and it probably has some of the other less populated states did not get much affected, more from the fact that it actually has that less denser populations. So people, even though they were not taking face mask protection, there was all widespread anyway. If you look at the death ratios, surprisingly enough, same states, the same 3 states we mentioned about amount of deaths. So the death proportional goes with the amount of people exposed. When you look at where we actually look at stratification, and this is a timeline in basically 10 of the most population high-base statistics, and you see this bimodal curve, and it's selected by the age group. So we saw this March rise up to slowly tapering down to May, and then July onwards, we started seeing a big. We started seeing a second dip in September, but now we are seeing a more dip. If you see the amount of age group and hospitalization, most of the senior patients were the most commonly hospitalized. And the reason being is not just for COVID, but they do have other health issues, so it makes them more vulnerable to get the. What you're looking at also by age groups, the pediatric, the kids were spared. There are some more science behind it, why they were actually not been seen. There were some disease that were very unique to pediatric patients, but more kids were spared, and I think more of them is just probably their ability bodies in their own system, because the immune system is so hypervigilant, they were able to be spared. And then last and the least, if you look at the age population, particularly the one that you look in the yellow bar is the one we need to start focusing on, and I'll share you some of the information why that population. The seniors, initially, though there were more hospitalizations, but what we are looking in the death ratio is the middle age, the 50s to 60s, 45 to 60s, that somehow more succumb to mortality. Here's what we looked at the age group in a graph form, and it's by ethnicity. So considering basically multinational ethnicity nation, particularly more so in California, if you look at where this population based on age group, and if you take the highest age group between the 50s and 65s, the most common affected in the 50s to 65s, particularly were African Americans. Some of the patches, particularly where there's a higher Hispanic population, did get affected, but more so do not undermine this disease. And the reason may be multifocal. One would be socioeconomic conditions. African Americans probably have a family dynamics that is very close knit. They're pretty much family oriented people. So a lot of factors may have played into this picture, but till we know the answers, we just need to be vigilant of that particular ethnicity. So how does this virus? Most of the common, it's usually aerosolized. The entry usually is eyes, nose, and throat or mouth. The most common is the nose and the mouth. And what we are seeing is typically it's a virus is airborne, and more commonly it's the particle size, the size of the virus, right? When we came up with this 6-foot distancing, we noticed that the highest amount of spread was within the first meter, which is about a little over 3 feet. But the reason of 6-foot distancing came into the fact as this aerosolization can travel up to 24 feet, more so on the surface, that it settles in acutely. And that's one of the reasons hand hygiene, personal hygiene and care would become more important. So in this environment is stable, there was some initial information the virus can live on surfaces for a longer period of time. The question is, yes, it can live on but is it infectious? And we don't have all those answers. So the key consideration, most commonly, we need to protect ourselves against cough, sneezing, and talking. At the same token, where this factor comes in, what Dr. Maxey was alluding, that, yep, we trust our cousins and uncles and aunts. Question is that could we still having asymptomatic viremia? They may not have symptoms, but they can still liable to spread that infection. And that simple thing as talking can be plenty. Second would be is what we noticed initially that the virus is typically even cultured after 9 days, right? Was rarely positive. So that is a relatively good news. So the 14-day isolation period we talked about was based on the fact that these people had, but typically what we are seeing, the activity of a virus diminishes after 9 days. And then last thing we addressed was as time load goes by, people who have survived, even they may not have left the hospital, their infectivity decreases with time. And that's promising and encouraging that our body's human ability to mount antibodies and immunity is slowly showing the strength. So talk about transmission. Initially, what we saw, the transmission, if you look at people who are symptomatic, that amount of transmission was like the yellow mountain that the blue mountain that you look was very rapid, and it was usually between the 5 and 14-day period. And that's one of the reasons we came up with a 14-day isolation. But the asymptomatic people who had been exposed but were not symptomatic were not entirely safe either. They could transmit the viruses. Then as you look over the pre-symptomatic transmission over probability and the density of people spreading it, noticeably can extend up to 20 days, but the most of the peak is usually between 9 days. Crowding, number one. If you look at particularly social distancing, most of the people who actually got together, that's why any space area that you can have should be overlapped. It was kind of noted that in the areas that where people were clustered together, within 18 minutes, you could spread the viruses between each other, right? So that's why social distancing becomes critical. Second, closed spaces where there's aerosolization and air conditioning systems, when we noticed that, it did help, but it still actually became it is not a foolproof immune system. You can still infect within 50 to 75 minutes. So just because you're in a well-protected office space or something like that, you still need to maintain the social distancing. So here's the key question about the distance of transmission. If you look at high risk versus low risk versus intermediate and 95% chance, that typical distancing, most of it see is about between 1 and 2 meters. At 3 meters, it pretty much is absolutely negligible risk. So understanding this gives us basically kind of a risk pattern of where we want to be addressed. If you know, like hospital and hospital personnel that we knew, which had an infection, the distancing was about 2 meters, right? On the same token, when you look at people who had very low or low probability red lines, at even 1 or 2 meters, they were not able to transmit the virus. Now, keep in mind, this is a small study of about 172 kind of individuals. So distancing still takes a priority, okay? So when we talk about face masks, and Dr. Beverly had earlier addressed, yes, do not underestimate the strength, whether you wear a surgical mask or N95 or a cotton mask. There is a significant, largest reduction in this virus transmission. Yes, simple measure, just a mask, right? When we looked at hospital personnel where they were using a special respirator or a device or something like that, there actually definitely was a great disposition, but compared to the majority of the population, it was limited in transmission for high-risk personnel within the hospital. When you look at the samples collected for children, particularly the children were more immune, but if the parents or anybody else wore the mask, they definitely had a significant reduction in transmission to the kids. So what do we actually look as pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical interventions? The recommendations that came out, more importantly, isolation, your self-isolation if you have an infection, quarantine, definitely are the ones who have infected. Social distancing 6 feet, wearing even a regular face mask in the public area is protective enough. hand hygiene, washing, particularly when you go to grocery stores or when you go pick up things. Even though they clean the carts and whatever they do, hand hygiene with a little soap and water is adequate, or if you want to use any of those pre-made solution with ethanol, right? Respiratory etiquette, coughing, sneezing, talking right in front of people, definitely, usually you want to make sure. And then the surfaces, particularly these applies mostly to frequently touched surfaces, hospital spaces, nursing home. If you're visiting family that has basically a lot of people coming out, definitely frequent cleaning of those areas, like what the airline industry has done is every flight they clean it up with full contact precautions. So how do we prevent? So for common public, most common, hand washing, mask, and then in a hospital setting, it's usually N95 or personal protective devices. More importantly, watch the elderlies, because even though we have seen some degree of immunity build up in the elderlies, they still are more vulnerable to the disease, particularly as we heard from Dr. Stella earlier with the diabetes population or elderly with other conditions, including heart and conditions. Confined spaces. If you decide to travel with the whole family in the car, and if you have any questions or doubt, avoid that kind of closed space, confined travel. So the hope that we talked about is herd immunity concept. What is herd immunity? What is that? The vaccines, the treatment, everything is coming, but given the history of vaccination, keep in mind, we have multiple vaccines, but it takes years and years and years to actually perfect. On an average, most of the vaccine takes about 8 to 10 years of work to perfection. We are rushing into making this vaccination. It has its merits, but is it going to offer us the protection we're looking for us from science and medicine industry is questionable. At the same token, there's something what we started seeing is what we call as a herd immunity. If a first susceptible person infect, he passes on. As time goes by, you see the blue gentlemen, only 1 out of the 4 will be infected, and then his transmission ability to transfer. So that is where, kind of in a simple schematic, this is how the herd immunity develops. And the reason to vaccinate our patients or whoever the high-risk people is for the same reasons. They will be even able to transmit the herd immunity once they're vaccinated, even if the other population did not get vaccine. And that's the more merit behind vaccinating every possible we can, or how much vaccine we got available and we'll be able to manufacture. Here's what we want to look at. 2 countries and some of the data from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. Now, Sweden is a very lightly populated population country, which did not believe that basically they have any risk. And interestingly enough, if you look Sweden in the gray, they were actually less stringent of the 4 countries when they originally infected. Look at their infection and COVID deaths. So even though it's the least populated country, if you don't take the measures of basically self-isolation, self-discipline, hand hygiene, face mask, and confining distances, you will be getting affected. When we talk about, somebody has a scribble pen. So when we look at particularly on portion of reported cases and trackers, keep in mind, majority of the people that are actually based by ethnicity, kind of which succumb to the disease are wrong. Even though the mortality was lower in African Americans with the higher reported cases, the white and the non-Hispanics were the most immune personalities.
Dr. Patel, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Are those scribble markings yours?
No, not mine.
Okay, this is what happened the last time we had a compromise in our call. So Simon, are you able to kind of see what's going on there?
I'm looking into it right now.
Okay, thank you. Apologize, I just don't want this to get
No worries.
1 second. If we do cut off, we will reconvene. We'll send out a new invitation right away and come back in if we have to break. Go ahead, Dr. Patel.
So when we talk about hospitalization, here's the ratio that most of the time, Hispanic Latinos, non-Hispanic African Americans were the highest amount that required hospitalized care. And as what we looked about even though the mortality was low, they were the highest population that required care. So the question for us remains still is, how do we avoid hospitalization? Because patients that were treated outpatient, even with COVID positive, particularly in this high-risk population, Hispanic, Latinos, and African Americans, when we treated them outpatient versus inpatient, they did better when we were able to treat them at outpatient, right? So that's why it's important that, more importantly, any hospitalization is associated with increased deaths. Let's skip that. So what can we do? What can we do is simple: maintain disease prevention. Plan is to increase the availability of testing, because more the knowledge we know how to isolate the community. Community members, particularly, is to find local resources and educate themselves. Consider probably having telecommunication with your doctors. I know a lot of doctors' offices were shut or probably closed, but now they're open to telecommunication. So that would be the better way of reaching out to your physicians. And public health recommendations, which kind of continues to change, and it sometimes does help, but also causes some confusion. But there are some newer recommendations that I'll subsequently show on the slides. So how do we screen for the diagnosis? Suspected cases, common symptoms, which have changed over time. But if you have fever lasting more than 48 hours, cough, fatigue, shortness of breath, or myalgia, consider that in this time that you probably are a high suspect for COVID. And one of those that factor that gets, if you had anybody that you came in contact with, or you travel in a highly endemic area, or you work in a healthcare setting, you definitely want to be tested. And most importantly, if you definitely have shortness of breath, do not wait. Most common myth was hospitals. The news, the media, how it was portrayed, the hospital. Actually, the hospital is probably one of the safest places to go if you have the shortness of breath, because the transmission in the hospital is about much more lower than what we are seeing in a grocery store or community. So do not ignore your health. Most commonly, what we have looked at in the typical indications is, if you have testing, who should be tested? Because the test is limited. If you have mild symptoms, definitely you need to get tested, but don't panic. It is important that you reach out to your primary care and ask for testing. If you have no symptoms or no close contacts, do not panic. You don't need to be tested regularly for the symptom, because likelihood, even if you had some, you will be asymptomatic, but that should not necessarily make you risk. Second, if you attended a gathering or had some places where there were more than widespread people, definitely, even with some minimal symptoms, you do not want to get tested. If you work in a healthcare facility or nursing home-like facility, you definitely want to get tested for the virus. Now, we talk about a little bit more about testing, what it means. There's two different testing available in the current market. Most reliable is what we call as a RNA test, which is a nasal swab or a salivary swab that basically scans for a virus in RNA mode. The blood test for antigen, which is probably about 92% sensitive, but there is some places where patients we have seen who were exposed in 20 years back to the coronaviruses in those era, which are not the same virus, but did show some positive antigens. I won't bore you with the details, but these are the kind of images we started seeing. And now the radiology department in the hospital has become very sophisticated. The pattern we see in the lung is very different than any other common pneumonias. It is more for the physicians to understand, but I think the pattern probably can persist, even though your COVID can go away, that your patterns of your x-rays can persist up to 60 to 90 days. Okay, let's talk about incubation periods. So once you're exposed, the likelihood of the spread won't show up in your symptom. At least it will take about 3 to 4 days by the time. Median is about 5 days before you notice that patients are symptomatic. So keep in mind that just because you were exposed and you heard and you rush for testing and your test comes negative, do not assume that you're safe, because you probably, if you don't have symptoms, wait for more a couple of days before we consider yourself getting tested 4 to 5 days in advance. Symptoms, we talked about headache, congestion, muscle fatigue, nausea, vomiting, any of those, and you don't have to have all. The most common symptom that you need to concern and worry about is usually fever. Okay. let's skip these two in the interest of time. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we have started seeing. And the reason not to ignore this disease is that people who have recovered from COVID as an infection, two things have popped up. They're not coming back to the hospital or any other reasons for recurrent pneumonia. Two things we started is having some more prevalence of heart disease, heart attacks, heart failures. The second thing we started seeing is more so, which is surprising to all of us in medical field, is strokes. So somehow this virus changes the ability of your vascular system, your blood vessels, to cause two major comorbid problems that are new. And we have seen this up to 90 to 100 days after patients have recovered from COVID. So neurological sequelae we talked about. So anytime you have basically patients that have symptoms and you feel vague or different or fatigue or anybody that you know of that had COVID, ask them to seek medical care. Let's talk about non-therapeutic measurements. Talked about face mask monitoring, but people who had COVID, the two things we have noticed: good food, exercise, health hygiene, and what we common diseases that Dr. Stella and we all talked about are equally important. One thing that we have noted that anticoagulation, that means based on the feeling between Plavix, aspirin, certain medications that are available, should be continued on people for about 90 days after they leave the hospital because of what we just mentioned about high risk for stroke and heart attack. And more importantly, in the disease that is severe, these are the patients that definitely needs rapid and more up-to-date. They should be examined by the doctors at least once a week for first 30 to 60 days, even after discharge from the hospital. Talking about, not to labor, but these are the strategies that came up with critical care, and these are the first line of treatment. So interestingly enough, as we initial pandemic started and people who were acutely ill, who ended up in the ICU and were critically ill, what we noticed, their mortality ranged from 50 to 60%. What we have seen, even though the disease now currently is in rise, we are not seeing that high amount of intensity or mortality anymore. Even the people with severity of illness that is requires them to be on a life support versus ICU level of care, it has dropped down to the 30s and 35. So there is some kind of help, maybe nature, maybe God. We are seeing some degree of immunity and tolerance where we are not seeing what we initially saw. Last of the list is some of the interesting things we saw. Kidney function and anemia. Kidney function been affected. People particularly who require dialysis or any other things we started seeing, and now we are seeing a little bit of anemia. So this is a lot of new learning curve. We do see some inflictions on patients that basically had some also liver disease, heart disease. We are seeing some new diabetes develop in these patients. So a lot of unknowns. So more importantly, if anybody in the community that you know of or any patients, make sure they seek medical help because we still are learning a lot as time passes by. Management, and not to confuse, but history started with when we had no management. We originally came with a medication called hydroxychloroquine, which is Plaquenil, which was actually rapidly marketed. Unfortunately, in that era, the study came from France, a limited amount of patients that showed. The theory behind this medication, it is not a cure for the virus, not a treatment for virus. What it did from our old history on patients with lupus and where we had used this medication was, it just delayed the binding of the virus to the affected cells in your body. And I won't make it too complicated on the receptor side, but it basically, what it did, allow certain patients to actually develop their own immunity and fight the disease. Further down, as we came to that, it had no role. And that's why it should not be used. Actually, we found more harm now on continuing that medication without. The second portion of was an antibiotic called erythromycin, which is commonly used for cold and sore throats and stuff like that. Those studies came from the old hantavirus, where what it did was if the virus affected your cells, it helped It did not treat the disease, but it helped eliminate the disease out of your body faster. So those were the theory. Now, the newer data does not support that either. So what we have in the current treatment is two modalities, a direct therapy that affects the virus and a second therapy that may augment or strengthen your immune system. As we speak, there are only two agents highlighted in the dark: convalescent plasma, that means filtered blood from patients who survived and has developed antibodies. That's one alternative for a direct viral. The second one, medication that FDA approved called remdesivir. Those are the only two known therapies as a medication currently that are available. On the other hand, what we have shown is things that we can improve our immune system. Corticosteroids, particularly dexamethasone, has shown a definite significant improvement in mortality, morbidity, and reduction in the hospital stay. The rest four labeled here are still considered controversial, experimental, and we have not seen a huge amount of improvement with either one of them. So more importantly, how do we stand? And I won't bore you, but this is more for physicians on the line, that basically once the patient gets admitted, probably your best if they have any pneumonia symptoms related to COVID and low oxygen, start them with dexamethasone, plus minus use of remdesivir if they are requiring more than 5 to 6 liters of oxygen versus using any other agents or therapy. Subsequently, intermittently, it's all of a clinical decision when to add on the convalescent plasma between the first 7 days. After that, probably the immune system has taken over, and that's why it may be a little late in the game. That's why initially when we were understanding the disease, there was high number of deaths, probably because of a lack of understanding of when to start the therapy. I won't bore you with these guidelines. These are details about, but more importantly, what I want to point out is when you look at remdesivir, and if you look at the third line, definitely it also showed some interesting results. Certain population, but certain ethnicity did better. And with steroids, remdesivir, African Americans definitely did better and showed improvement than compared to Asians versus Italians. Dexamethasone, what we talked about, steroid, basically, I won't bore you with the same details, but definitely same thing. What we're seeing in people that who had no requirement for oxygen or ICU, they definitely did better than most of the other patients, but in the usual care. But steroids in all patients, particularly ventilated ones or any other ethnicity, did definitely help therapy. Let me skip in part of the slide. So last in the list, what we have not now to understand, what has happened is something we are finding with this virus is very interesting. The survivors of the people who have survived the disease are showing some secondary or late portion of diseases that we have never seen in the past. They're showing more of thromboinflammation. That means vessels been clotted, more strokes, more heart attacks, more kidney disease. At the same token, we are seeing some entities, something like vitamin D deficiency, bone thinning, stuff like that, which is interesting to science, but something that we should start focusing on. And this is more of an education for the physicians to reach out to the patients and start monitoring those patients. Okay. Vaccine, we briefly talked about it. There are actually 5 vaccines in works right now. We'll have to wait out which one gets the final approval. There is some promises on medications like Regeneron and vaccine. If there's an ability, most people are kind of worried about the vaccine and what it's going to say. The data currently available shows that there is at least a 67 to 70% efficacy of those vaccines, not full 100%, but still there. And it may attribute of helping the rest of the herd community. So something we don't have adequate data. Hopefully sooner we should have some more information in months to come over the next 1 or 2 months. So in interest of time, I know it was a long chat and long multiple things, but I would probably end here and open up for questions. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle, for your excellent talk. Let me ask the first question while Michelle looks at the chat box. Let me give you a hypothetical patient. I'm a 50-year-old Black man. I live in Inglewood. I work at the racetrack, and I've been coughing. I've got a fever. My 5 children live with me and my wife at home. And I'm having some shortness of breath and anxiety. My temperature is 103. What do I do?
First thing, more likely isolate yourself from the home. If you feel okay, you're not short of breath, you definitely need to isolate the rest of the family to protect yourself. The second thing I would strongly recommend is go to the hospital. If you have a fever that did not subside more than 6 to 8 hours and it was continuously high, do not take that chances. Because what we noticed, this disease can rapidly progress very rapidly. So at that point, it's better to check out. You may not require hospitalization based on what they find, but it's better to get it checked out. And most people were scared and afraid. Most hospitals were able to actually take care of these people in a different environment where they were not more exposed. But what we are seeing is what we call as the catastrophic storm that happened earlier on. We are not seeing that much as right now. Within hours, patients arriving to the emergency room in 4 hours while they're waiting to get tested, and the testing was a little behind. Now we have rapid tests that can be tested within minutes. Those time has passed, and these people basically ended up in the ICU on a life support within 4 to 5 hours. So if you have what you described as symptoms that are non-specific with a persistent fever, and you had an environment where you have high risk for exposure, it is better to get checked out.
Thank you. Michelle, you have some questions in the chat box?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Patel, as well. So several questions. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to try to organize them.
Sure.
But regarding the vaccine, is there an exemption for people with allergies to vaccines?
So most of the vaccines are usually made out of egg protein or a protein as a binding agent. So the exemption for allergies would only be to people who have known allergies to any egg or egg-related protein as a binding. There are some substances that people have been allergic to called thimerosal, which is another part of the vaccine. So that's probably where you want to make sure that people are not allergic to any other prior vaccines because of that. Now, a lot of people have a misconception of allergies. Allergy means if you had a little bit of mild headache or body ache or pain, that is a lot different than an allergy where you actually broke out in hives or had shortness of breath or headaches, persistent symptoms. So these are the kind of questions probably are better left to professionals to address with your physicians rather than assuming you're allergic to a vaccine.
So do you recommend that people maybe contact their doctors now to start having that conversation about whether or not they believe they would be seriously allergic to the upcoming vaccinations that will be presented?
So the vaccine that's going to be launched, it is egg protein based. So that's definitely known for a fact. It does not have a thimerosal component to it in the first batch of vaccine that's going to probably be released. Okay. And that fact that, yes, if you are allergic to egg protein, that's the question that if you have any history, you do want to run that by your physician in future. We do not know exactly how many vaccines and how many status. So if you combine the entire world, and there are 10 or 12 large vaccine manufacturing companies in the world. If they all stop making any other vaccine and then start making vaccine, we will probably make close to about 1 billion vaccines in a year. The world population is 7 billion. So we are ways away from vaccinating the entire world. So how much supply comes in and how much it comes in, I think the larger manufacturers are in the United States and Europe. So we do have some certain advantages of getting vaccine. How that distributes is in federal control right now. They are going to decide who are the population that's going to be getting the vaccine first.
Okay, so related to that, you mentioned proteins with the vaccine. So are the COVID vaccines being produced with eggs?
No, then what they do is the vaccine, the way that binding agent, any vaccine that is manufactured has to have some degree of what we call is a binding agent to bind to the cell or anything. So typically, the egg protein was the most commonest and easily available protein to bind. It is a fraction of an albumin, the component of an egg that actually is extracted, purified, and used as a binding agent.
Okay, thank you. You have time for more?
Sure.
Okay, so is there an updated study on the safety of swimming pools? Does the virus live in chlorinated water?
So there is data that shows that chlorination definitely has eliminated the virus. The question is how much chlorine? And each pool have used certain amount of chlorine and which is not consistent. The second portion of it is the survival of a virus in any water environment we have noticed is a slightly longer than any surface. So the swimming pool theory will pan out only if we have a calibration of how much chlorine. The chlorine that currently is recommended in the amount of swimming pool will be toxic to your eyes and ears and nose and hair. So I would not recommend till we have definite that any amount of your home dumping a lot of chlorine is going to save you because it may cause other harms.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth the swim at that point, would it? Okay, so there's another question here from a doctor. I have read that the guidelines put out by the CDC for cause of death were loosened for COVID to include suspected and non-verified cases. Has there been any change in these guidelines, or are any doctors' organizations looking into this?
So here, the interesting fact about COVID-related guidelines and death, because what we initially did, the reason to collect this data is for population and statistics. If any of these doctors who are on this chat knows very well that if you write death caused death as cardiac arrest, in spite of patient died with a bad pneumonia, the reason is the way the statistics are, we have not updated our death table since 1972. So that's why a lot of this classification of true death gets compromised. Now, the reason to document COVID-related death is twofold. One, if you don't know or you highly suspect, yes, attribute it to COVID because we have seen a larger amount. And then it also helps us as population statistics, how to drive our resources, research, medication. If the death and mortality is higher, you want to have the resources available pre-front. So it's important. These guidelines have been now a little more liberal than what you used to. In olden days, if you had a pneumonia and you wrote a cause of death as pneumonia, the coroners will send the death certificate back to you. So nobody dies of pneumonia. Let's just explain what was the reason for the pneumonia, 10 other factors. So most of the patients were documented as death from cardiac or cardiovascular disease than a true pneumonia. So that's why it is important that we get our statistics correctly to drive our resources. That's more of a reason rather than just
Dr. Patel, I've got two political type questions. One, there's been some rumors that doctors get paid more if they put the diagnosis of COVID on a death certificate or on a diagnosis. That's one. More importantly, after health professionals get the vaccine, what groupings of the social population should be considered to be first in line?
So to answer your first question, that is not true. Doctors do not get paid more. The only liberation that Medicare, which is CMS, and only Medicare and some managed Medicare entities have allowed is doctors to do televisit. Televisit priorly was highly regulated, but that's the only advantage. You do not have additional reimbursement for a physician. The second portion of clarity is on the hospital side, and only Medicare, straight Medicare, that is not managed care, not any other insurance company, because the resources spent in the hospital were humongous and lower volume, Medicare allowed additional 20% reimbursement only on COVID-proven patient to the hospital, not to the physician. So hopefully that answers that specific clarification. On the other hand, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, thanks. They need to send me a check.
Right.
Go ahead.
So the second portion of the question you asked about particularly who should be the patient that are people that should be screened. So any people who are in healthcare industry, because they come in contact with a large amount of patients, right? Particularly the vulnerable patient with diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cardiomyopathy, kidney problems. So the healthcare provider, not just physicians, but nursing, particularly frontline emergency room, EMS, paramedics, should be considered as the first line, not just to protect. It's not a question of protection just for them. The second reason, what I was saying, that even if they are partially protected, they're able to transmit a large amount of herd immunity. So that's the science behind why they chose the healthcare providers and that group. The second group that I would strongly recommend is the elderly and the nursing home patients, particularly ones who have diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, prior strokes, people who are limited in their activity and mobility. And then some of this, do not underestimate obesity, because obesity has now showing some signs, which Dr. Stella correctly shared, is affects not only just diabetes and health, but also other morbid illnesses. So these are the groups that are probably going to be the first line of people getting the vaccination.
And my last question, unless Michelle has more, there's a lot of hesitancy of people in general, but people of color specifically, thinking that maybe this vaccine is politically motivated. Can you comment on that if you're comfortable? If not, I understand.
So the disease is real. Disease is definitely real. And I tell you why. If you look at the history, the last worst pandemic that ever happened basically was actually in 1914, the Spanish flu after the First War. It never came to America. But when the soldiers returning from First World War came to America, that's when Spanish flu came to America. We did not see that much mortality in America, but it wiped out 1/3 of the country, 1/3 of the nation, and 1/3 of the world. So that was flu then. If you look at then progressive in the last 15 years, starting with Corona and SARS virus, we talked about 15 or 18 years back. It never made it to America, but it did have significant. There were some Magellan and other viruses that had a 30 to 40% mortality. Ebola, about 40%. Hanta had about 16%. These are highly fatal viruses that never spread because two things: more deadly the virus, earlier the host, whoever it affected, passes away or dies away. So their ability to transmit becomes more of a remote point because the virus dies with the host. The problem in particularly coronavirus is it's not as deadly as what we thought. If you look common flu has a mortality of 6 to 8% in elderly. This virus has 4%. The only problem with this is because it's not as fatal and patients became symptomatic and carried this virus, they were transmitting it to more and more people, which is highly virulent, not toxic. The amount of deaths percent-wise from the people affected is a lot less. It's in about average initially 4%, now it's 2.5%. But just because it lingers around in humans and system, we are transmitting, so more people get affected. That's why the number of deaths are high. The percent of death is a lot lower. So when you ask that political question about politics and stuff like that, how this virus and other, the only thing would love to comment on as a country, doesn't matter whether we are Republican, liberal, Democrats, we did a disservice to the nation of not passing the right education in November last year, January this year to our group. It basically it's been in this country, it is here. We need to make sure what we do is to address our community and our people.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Patel. I definitely appreciate this. Michelle, is there any questions for any of the speakers before we move to the next segment and close?
Sure, Dr. Maxey. Yeah, there's a practical question. I mean, you may have already covered this, Dr. Patel, but I think it's worth reiterating it. So the question, anyone, yeah. Should patients testing positive be treated prior to the onset of symptoms?
No, the data shows that if you're just positive and you do not have symptoms, your immune system will handle it. Symptoms being, if you have little headaches, little fever, take symptomatic treatment. The only time you want to get concerned if you have an abnormal chest x-ray or shortness of breath. Those are the ones you definitely want to treat. Just because you're tested positive does not warrant treatment, because the treatment itself is not 100% guaranteed. The second portion is the treatment has its own risks.
Okay. Well, here's a fun question. I don't really want to talk about this guy, but someone keeps asking the question. Do we believe that 45 really ever had COVID?
Say that again, sorry.
President Trump, do we believe that he ever really had the illness?
So, we will never know. We will never know if it was a political agenda, or basically question even if he had COVID, did he have the real symptoms to require hospitalization? We would never know that information. It was all hush hush. The question would be is, yes, there is always a debate of why he would have. A lot of people have positive COVID and celebrities have positive COVID, but not necessarily they had symptoms to go with it, right? So the question would be is, what I said, the political agenda of kind of how we portray this probably is not the best way of looking at it. More important, what I would still, as a physician and as a community doctor, information we share with our patients, particularly we have great brains in this country, the CDC, the NIH, the brilliant doctors. Those are the ones who should be passing on the right information, rather than a newscast or every night you saw on CNN or Fox or any other network, everybody became an overnight expert. There is no experts in this country. We all are learning.
Yeah, got one more for you. Should patients be treated with aspirin or similar post-exposure as preventative care, despite negative test results?
So if you had a COVID requiring hospitalization, pneumonia, or requiring ICU level of care, aspirin by itself is just a partial treatment, but you may need specific anticoagulations that are available in the market, and that leave it up to your doctor. There are medications like Eliquis, Lovenox, etc. If you had any risk of diabetes, obesity, hypertension, and you were COVID positive, yes, lean on taking at least a baby aspirin a couple of times a week just to protect your coroners.
Well, thank you. We're going to move towards the end of the program. I want to make several announcements on closing. Black Health Trust has developed several partner relationships with companies around the country to bring benefits to participants and members of the Black Health Trust. One such company is a company called Self-Pay Medicine, and that allows you, for a small monthly fee, to attain lab tests, imaging studies at a fraction of the cost. For example, an MRI might cost you $3,000 to make up a number, but we can provide you with a cash price of, say, $299. And a part of that money will go to support the Black Health Trust. That company is headed by one of our members, who is Dr. Ken Snyder. Another company that we intend to announce our relationship with next week is a company called Revival Medicine, headed by Dr. Carter and Dr. Lewis. And they have developed a program along with laboratories that look at your body in more detail than you might at I'll use the word traditional laboratory, and can diagnose things and have a program to develop a health plan for you long-term, including exercise, health coaching, and we're happy to work with them. We also have talked with and made a relationship with a company called Second Opinion Experts, and we're assembling a group of world-class physicians that can provide medical second opinions for you. There's proprietary software that can summarize a chart so that the consulting doctor only needs to use 20 or 30 minutes with full access to imaging, et cetera. And that will be announced next week as well. We also are pretty far along the way to working with a company called Clinicians RX, where they have a pharmaceutical program for cash. Many of you may know I'm Medicare age, and I hit the donut hole last week, and which means if my insurance does not pay for my medicine. So I told my son, don't get it. I'm going to deal with Clinicians RX and get my money's worth for a cash price. For example, they have psychologic medications for $18 a month. I'm gonna go get some of those psych medicines for myself to cool me out. I'm joking. But so we have a number of these that are legitimate, that are very good for our participants. What we need from you is to get your contact information, your emails sent to us at blackhealthtrust.org on our website. And if we hear from you, we can send you the information and the literature. And we welcome all of those companies which are good to work with the Black Health Trust. So we thank our speakers, Dr. Stella, my friend from Zimbabwe. No, we don't know each other personally, but I did take care of the president there for years. So I'm an honorary Zimbabwean, and we thank her. We thank our committee that we're going to bring back just to close us out. Mr. James Stevens, we sure appreciate you. Mr. Aaron Palmer, we thank you. And my old friend, Dr. Patel, we thank you for your excellent lecture. We thank you so much. Michelle, is there a word from Tori, Judy, or you on the?
Love for Tori to, where is she? Tori, you want to give us our word, or affirmation, quote?
Well, I had put it in the chat. Let's see.
I saw it. I just wanted to know if you wanted to share it.
Well, if I can find it. It was when you have an ideal to live, it's better to have an ideal, to live for an ideal that lives on than to die for an ideal that dies. It was something similar to that by Steve Biko, B-I-K-O.
It is better to die. It is better to die for an idea that will live than to live for an idea that will die. Steve Biko.
That's it. That's it.
And that's a great one. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last words, Dr. Stevens?
Well, I would just like to say that we have had another wonderful experience this afternoon. We have shared and heard information that can make a major difference in our lives if we will just heed the information that was shared. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Dr. Maxey.
As my last word, we are in a war. We're in a battle. By keeping your body strong, by eating right, social distancing, being cleanly in what you do, and following credible medical advice, you become the offense and not the defense. It's better to have a good, strong offense, and that will defeat all. And believe me, we are in a war. Is Ms. Brenda Lieger on to end our call?
Yes, she is. She's on her way. She's right behind me. Would you like to use my computer? Yeah, I might as well. Okay.
And we'll never walk alone. We'll never walk alone. Good afternoon, everyone. This has been a wonderful, as always, a wonderful, wonderful 2 hours. I thank every one of the doctors and all the speakers. And we're going to close out with the idea that God is all that there is, everywhere present. And if that is true, and I believe that, God is right where we are, right where our bodies are, right where we are in this moment and every moment. So I just take the time to say, thank you, God, for all of us. We live and have our being in you. So therefore, this is a storm that will pass over. And in that passing over, We'll rise up and being our true nature, loving one another, loving God, and we're the ones we've been waiting for. Amen. And so it is.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
See you next week.